do want to ask in this section here,
One, two,
that
one,
those
two.
that are holding
You see,
signs,
you see it now?
if you can bring them down some,
All right,
people
cool.
can see behind you. Those are the marshals. We need you to pass people placards, and we are together in our messaging.
Hey folks, Roland Martin here. We are live here in the nation's capital for the Poor People's Campaign Mass Assembly 2022. We literally just started. We just started with the prayer here. So let's go to the stage with Reverend Dr. William J. Barber.
Invite clergy and religious brothers and sisters from many different faith traditions. If they would come on the stage now and stand together behind Reverend Jackson. They will each come as a part of the litany.
Good morning, Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. I'm Alvin O'Neill Jackson, Executive Director of the Mass Poor People's Low Wage Workers Assembly and Moral March on Washington
that's it.
and to the polls. We prepare now for a moral grounding as we receive the blessing of moral grounding from faith leaders across this land. I have the great joy of introducing our dear sister and friend, beloved, the Reverend Dr. Terry Howard Owens, General Minister and President of the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ, officer of the National Council of Churches, and just back from the World Council of Churches in Geneva, Switzerland. She comes today to lead these faith leaders in this moral framing and grounding. Welcome, Reverend Owens.
Today, my friends, faith leaders from so many religious traditions stand in solidarity with those who are impacted by poverty, ecological devastation, militarism, lack of health care, and the distorted narrative of religious nationalism. no matter how you call the holy, all of our sacred texts compel us to create a world in which there is enough for us all. The Poor People's Campaign is a moral call for national revival, a national call to moral revival, and we stand in the tradition of prophets of old as prophets in this time to call our country to account. We cannot simply preach or read from sacred texts and not join with others to demand action. We cannot simply gather in our houses of worship or offer only thoughts and prayers when people all around us are suffering and dying. So now is the time for action. Now is the time to join together as this movement for wholeness and justice. For silence is betrayal of all that we believe and hold dear. To be silent is to make hypocrisy of the faiths we profess. And so now we hear the leaders of our faiths. We join together today as moral leaders from across religious traditions to call the nation to mourn, repent, and reconstruct how it treats poor and low-wealth people.
From across a nation with unprecedented wealth that continues to legislate evil and ignore the least of these.
Thank you, Bishop Buddy. I'm Sheila Katz, CEO of National Council of Jewish Women. Shabbat Shalom. We gather on these streets in the spirit of the prophet Amos, who declared, "Hate evil and love good, and establish justice in the public square."
Good morning. I'm Sonsiris, Iyalorisha Sonsiris Efuntayo from Ileyemu in Brooklyn. Look at me, you might know it also as Santeria tradition, Afro-Cuban. And for today, I would like to share these words. We raise our voices with love and we raise it with lament. We raise it with praise and we raise it with protest. We raise it with truth-telling and we raise it with prophetic witness. Amen and Ashe.
Assalamu alaikum, greetings of peace. Your brother Imam Safik Kadavic from the Islamic Society of North America. We heed the charge from the Holy Quran. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kunu qawwamina bil qist. O you who have believed, be persistent, standing firm in justice, witnesses for God. Surah An-Nisa, the chapter on the woman, chapter 4, 1 verse 35.
William H. Lamar IV of the African Methodist Episcopal tradition, pastor of the Metropolitan Church here in Washington, D.C. We embody the words of the prophet Isaiah. We learn to do right. We seek justice. We defend the oppressed. We take up the cause of the vulnerable, and we plead the case of the poor. Amen and Ashe.
Namaskaram, my name is Nikhil. I'm here on behalf of Hindus for Human Rights and Sadhana Coalition of Progressive Hindus. We declare truth and love in the name of all that which is holy. God, Allah, Great Spirit, Brahma, and all those too sacred to voice.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Charles Rhodes, the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries. Our sacred teachings insist everybody in and nobody out. And when we lift from the bottom, everybody rises.
Amen. 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 The Reverend Karen Brow, serving at Luther Place Church in Washington, D.C., and Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. God demands justice and fair dealing, reads the Holy Quran.
Shane Claiborne from Red Letter Christians. Jesus says, if we don't care then we don't really love God, and we stand under God's judgment.
Amen. Bernard Richardson, Howard University's Rankin Chapel. The prophet Micah reminds us, God has told you, O mortal, what is good. But what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God?
I am Sister Anne-Marie Miller from the Sisters of Mercy of the Americas. And in the Catholic social teaching, the holy words of Deuteronomy are clear. Justice, justice shall you pursue.
Reverend Jimmy Hawkins for the Presbyterian Church USA, the Advocacy Director for the Presbyterian Ministry of the United Nations and the Washington Office of Public Witness. As James' epistle reminds, the workers you have used and abused cry out against the unjust. Their cries have reached the ears of God.
I'm Sandy Sorensen with the United Church of Christ, Washington, D.C. Public Policy Advocacy Office. Therefore, in this world of abundance, not scarcity, we cry out, there is enough for everyone's need. But there is not enough for such corporate greed.
Namaste. Reverend Abhijan Amanchi, Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church and Bethesda and Unitarian Universalist Association. As we correct the earth, we hurt the spirit that binds us all. When we violate the river, the soil, the mountain and tree, we violate the sources of life that God provided for all, not just a select few.
Joyce Ajluni from the American Friends Service Committee. We are the Quakers. We lament a nation addicted to a war economy. Too many in the nation's seats of power are guided by domination, violence, and division. And we yearn a nation and a world guided by love, by justice and unity.
Reverend Adam Russell Taylor, President of Sojourners. We're an ecumenical Christian organization committed to peace and justice. We join together in prayer for the entire world with our hearts and our feet.
I'm Frederick Douglass Haynes III, Senior Pastor of Friendship West Baptist Church in Dallas, Texas, co-chair of the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference. In the face of systemic racism, we declare that silence is betrayal. In the face of poverty, we declare that silence is betrayal. In the face of ecological devastation, we declare that silence is betrayal. In the face of militarism and a war-based economy, we declare that silence is betrayal. In the face of a lack of health care, we declare that silence is betrayal. In the face of a distorted moral narrative of religious nationalism, we declare that silence is betrayal. In the face of death because of poverty, silence is betrayal.
Reverend Maba Jonas, United Church of Christ. I bring greetings as the chaplain of Goucher College in Baltimore, Maryland. from the truth of our humanity, and born from the lips of our many prophets, teachers, and sages, we solemnly commit to doing justice, to loving one another, and to striving until victory is ours.
Reverend Dolimar Lebron Malavé, the United Methodist Church, representing the People's Church in East Harlem, New York, and Associate Director of IFCO Pastors for Peace. Today we pray for the elders that are still with us, for the children birthed in this movement now. We pray to the Holy One and to the ones of infinite name and reach.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. This is a beautiful day, Bishop Barber. You love it when I do the Hebrew. It's a day that God has given us because the God who is above is here with us on earth with the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. We, all of us faith leaders, like the ones before us, are now the ones that we have been waiting for. We will raise our cry and we will call for change because nothing less would be a betrayal of our sacred commitment. Let us all say, Amen. Shabbat Shalom.
Let us all say amen. Let us all say shalom. Let us all say assalamu alaikum. Let us all say thank you. And now at this time, there's a powerful group of young people who said, listen, we don't want to be on the side of the movement, we're in the movement, and they are coming with a special drama presentation, Let America Be America Again. Give it up for them. Let's celebrate everybody. And I should have said something not so young, but just young in spirit. Those are the marshals. Would you make sure that the band in the back ceases to play so that it won't infect what's going on here? Those marshals in the back, tell them we have one band on stage. Amen. Let's go.
Let America be America again. Let it be the king and you let it be the pioneer on the plain.
Folks, as you can see, we're here at this mass assembly. There are folks literally going down Pennsylvania now. To my right is the U.S. Capitol. We literally are right across from the Department of Justice. Folks, again, are gathered here with their signs, a new unsettling force. Everybody rises forward together, not one step back. This event has been planned for quite some time by the Poor People's Campaign, led by Reverend Dr. William J. Barber and Reverend Liz Theo Harris, folks from all walks of life in this country. Reverend Barber has consistently talked about the importance of low-wage workers poor workers and what really is going on here in this country. The Biden administration, and we're going to play an interview a little bit later with Reverend Barber. I talked to him before the march. They talked about how the failure of the Biden administration to meet with the Poor People's Campaign, meet with low-wage affected workers. They want the policies of this administration, the policies of this Congress to impact the poor. And in fact, what's quite interesting here, there's a significant contrast, if you will. This weekend, Ralph Reed, who is a white conservative evangelical, has his Faith in Freedom conference taking place at the same time. Donald Trump spoke at that particular event. You would be hard-pressed to find the poor being talked about at Ralph Reed's conference. If you want to understand real Christians, if you want to understand those who truly follow Jesus, I think you can look at the difference between Ralph Reed's so-called Faith and Freedom Conference and this particular gathering here. Just a moment ago, you had the efforts being led by clergy from all around the country. They actually opened this event up, and so that's an important distinction for folks to remember when we're talking about what is happening in this country, how we have too many evangelicals, white conservative evangelicals who've forgotten the poor, who don't talk about the poor, who don't bring them up. It's not a part of their agenda. They are more focused, if you will, on Republican policies, more aligned with the Chamber of Commerce than they are with Jesus. And so,
if you would bring it down so people could see in front of you.
And so again, they got lots of signs out here. You see Reverend Barber asking them to lower those signs. They've got more than 500 buses that are coming in. And so, again, people literally are all along Pennsylvania, and they still are coming. And so you see right here, this live look right here of those assembled here for this mass poor people's and low-wage workers assembly.
Except for the state sign. Except for the state sign. If you have a state sign, you can hold it up. In a moment, we're all going to be lifting our placards together in your hands.
And so Reverend Barber just asked them to lift the state signs, and we can see right now California, Washington State, we can see Kansas, North Carolina, Illinois, Florida. I'm trying to look, I can't see all the way down, but I'm seeing some of the other signs as well.
All right. There we go. That's what we want folks to see. Issue. Thank you so much. We still got signs up in the back. Can y'all hear me back there? All right, we need your signs down. The ones that are carrying on the sticks, the stick signs, bring those down and pick up a placard. Bring the stick signs down and pick up a placard. Well, you know every movement's got a rhythm, and every movement's got a sound. And this band is made up of more than 50 impacted people, poor and low wealth, that says as long as we fight, they'll sing. And as long as they sing, we'll fight. It's the baddest choir that's out here because it's a choir about the movement, and we want to bring it on now, led by Sharon, led by Yara Allen, led by Dr. Bell, led by Freddie Green, the Street Genie, and the other members of the band. Come on, y'all. Let's have a little rhythm out here.
Look at the people tonight. Look at the people they deny. Look at the people tonight. Look at the people they deny. We the people they deny. We the people they deny. We're the people they deny. We're the
doing something nobody else did. No, we connect the movements. Now to connect the movements with a symbolic flame of connecting all the movements of the past to the movement now is Reverend Nelson Johnson and his wife Joyce Johnson from the Beloved Center. Would you come at this time?
Elder, you, elder, you, elder, lift up the light, sharing the light. I am Nelson Johnson. We are elders, 79 years and still working. We elders, all right, hail from the South and the cool North. We are elders of Middle America, all over this nation. We bring the tradition of struggle from the 30s and the 40s and the 50s and that great movement of leaders from the 60s. Lift up the light, youth, elder.
Hi, Reverend Barber. We've been talking about this for a long time, been running promos and tweeting all about it.
My name is Abigail
For folks who don't understand.
I'm so
Hi, Reverend Barber. We've been talking.
with y'all. So glad. From Maine to Miami, from the far west of California to Washington, D.C., we are Generation X, Y, Z, and beyond. We built on the Black Liberation Movement, and we made it into the Black Lives Matter movement. Youth, elder, youth, elder, youth, elder.
I'm Joyce Hobson Johnson. I'm 75 years old. We elders bring the great traditions of struggle from SNCC, the Black Panther Party, the Young Lords, SCLC, CORE, the AFL-CIO, the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. fierce determination of that elderly sister from the Montgomery bus boycott in 1955, who after walking for months declared that my feet is tired,
Amen. Amen.
but my soul is happy.
Amen.
Lift up the light. Share the light. Elders, youth, elder, elder, youth, elder, youth, elder.
My name is Nelson Johnson. I am 13 years old. We youth bring a broad and growing diversity in these new days. We will bring new ways, always respecting that way over which we have come, watered with the blood of our mothers and fathers. We will stretch across systems and culturally imposed lines of division as we strive to build a more powerful people's unity that can shape these United States and build a more perfect union. Lift up the light, sharing the light. Elders, youth, elders, elders, youth, elders, youth, elders, youth, elders.
Remember those movements, let us be reminded that people cost their lives. But it never stole our joy. We weren't always happy, but we always kept the joy. And so because many of you, even as you come here today to share your pain, and you've been through so much, we want to take a moment and I want to ask you, whatever you need to do in your own way to be thankful to God, thankful to the divine spirit of the universe. But in this moment, we want to take a moment to say, for every mountain, for every mountain, for every racism, for every hurt, for every injustice that God ever brought us through, we will always give God praise.
And so many open doors of brand new mercy. That's why I praise you. For this I give you praise. For waking me up this morning, praise you. For starting me on my way, praise you. For letting me see
folks, one of the things that we have to understand, music played an integral part of the Black freedom movement. There were numerous folks who would be in prisons. They would be on mass marches, and they would be singing. That was a huge, huge thing. In fact, remember when I interviewed Ambassador Andrew Young, he said one of the things that he wished Black Lives Matter had done was actually embrace music. That's one of the things that he talked about. There are a number of people who are here. There are activists. There are elected officials, others as well. In a second, I'm going to talk to Mondale Robinson, who just got elected mayor in a rural part of North Carolina, beating a long-term incumbent. So we're going to talk to him in a second. We'll be talking to Reverend Mark Thompson as well. Of course, Mark was with us in Austin when the Poor People's Campaign had their voting rights march there. So we chatted with him as well. And so, again, there just are a number of folks who are here who have come together to bring attention on the poor and low-wage workers in this country. So we certainly look forward to that, being able to talk to him about that. And so over the course of the next several hours, you'll see us amplifying these issues. Let's do this here. Before the march began, we had an opportunity to talk to Reverend Dr. William J. Barber. So if we have that interview ready, let's go ahead. And actually, let's do this right here. We're going to play that in a second. I'm going to sit here and talk with Mondale Robinson right here. And so, Mondale, take a seat right here. So, Mondale, first and foremost, let folks know, first, you've been active in Democratic politics, but then you decided recently to run for political office.
Yeah, man, I got tired of a couple things. One, people acting like rural America is only white America, when I know in the South, 30% of the rural population is black people. And then also, I'm tired of hearing people say that, there's no space for progressive politics in rural spaces. So I decided to go back home in Hinfield, North Carolina, and run for office on the most progressive platform in North Carolina of anybody running this year.
So what city was it?
The town is called Enfield.
Okay. How many people? And for folks who don't know, what is it near?
Okay, yeah. The easy way to explain Enfield is it's 45 minutes northeast of Raleigh and about an hour south of Richmond, Virginia.
Got it.
So right down that border as soon as you cross 95. And it's about 3,000 people in the town.
And so you ran against an incumbent?
I ran against an incumbent. And we didn't just beat that incumbent, Roland. We beat him by 56 percentage points. We got 76% of the vote. Running a platform talking about universal basic income, talking about how we talk about not defunding but definitely cutting back funds for police departments, and also doing other things like creating free housing for people who are suffering.
Now, this particular town here, what's the racial makeup?
It's 95% black.
Got it. Yeah. You talk about, so 95% black, and lay out your message and lay out what you said to them that others say can't work in rural America.
Yeah, so first of all, we didn't respond to any of the opponent was a Republican. We didn't respond to any of the talking points, the critical race theory, all of that. None of that mattered to me. All I wanted to talk about.
You also didn't have news conferences where you had law enforcement up there, so you don't scare people to say, "Oh my goodness, he's all about law and order." Because that's it. Look, I've already heard that criticism of the campaign of Sherry Beasley and Val Demings, that coming out of the gate, this whole focus on not wanting to scare people that about law enforcement. I said, when you do that, you're playing on defense. You're playing their game.
And you're absolutely right. Not only are you playing defense, though, Roland, you're also trying to get a base that you're never going to get, or a vote that you're never going to get. Those white voters you're trying to turn on by not frightening them about law and order, you're going to lose black voters at the account. We Democrats need to get comfortable with the idea that we're never going to get more than 24% of white voters anymore, as long as we're advocating for policies that benefit the entire Big Ten. Until we're comfortable with that, we're going to lose races we don't have to lose. What we need to do is figure out ways we turn out the 45-50% of black men who don't normally vote. And that's not a critique of black men. That's a critique of the transactional way we play politics. So having talking points about critical race theory, about law and order, and how many people you locked up when you were in your last position, that's not a message for black people. Black people aren't talking about these gun rights right now. What we are talking about is economic issues. What we are talking about is how people are bragging about how great the economy doing, and black men still at near double-digit unemployment rates. You're invisibling black men and keeping them away from the polls, making them not interested in this.
And so, so you laid this agenda out, and clearly the people responded.
They did, man. And not only did they respond in voting, because you and I both know voting is not revolutionary. Electing somebody to office is not revolutionary. Unelecting an incumbent is revolutionary, right? When you're not doing what you're supposed to do. But what is we went from 10 to 15 white people at the board meeting every month to now having 40, 50 young black folk at the poll. We had more young voters vote for me.
Wait a minute, hold on.
There, brother.
In a town that's 95% black?
Yeah. Only the white people were showing up to the meetings.
And see, now that was one of the things that I talked about this week on the show. And in fact, I gave a Juneteenth speech on Thursday. When I challenged the audience and I said, guys, I covered city council. I covered county government. I saw how the sausage was made. My parents were co-founders of a civic club in Houston. And so I remember being 10, 11, 12, 13, going to city council meetings, going to county commissioners meeting, going to state legislature. And what I keep telling people is that voting is the end of one process, it's the beginning of another. We can't just say, well, I did my part, I elected them. No, we've got to show up at the school board meeting, the city council meeting, the county board meeting, show up at those places, and so people see and feel our presence. I said, because the other folks are. And that is stunning, what you just said, in a town that's 95% black. It was 10 to 15 white folks showing up and no black folks.
Yeah, and also showed in past elections, Roland. Some people people had been in the town their whole life. 50, 60-year-old people had never been in the town. They were astonished at how rude and how brazen this white mayor was in this town. But he became mayor because nobody voted in their last election. We got a white Republican commissioner in a town that's 95% black because nobody's voting. But all of the 100 white people that are voting every election.
But also not just because no one was voting. Reverend Barber and I talked earlier, we're going to play this interview in a second. He said no one talked to them.
Absolutely.
He said no one ever knocked on their door.
Absolutely. So I tell people all the time, when I say people aren't voting, it's not a critique of the voter. We don't critique customers that buy Pepsi. Coca-Cola just try to figure out how to win those voters. The Democratic Party is failing black people because they're not actually talking to black people. And when they are, they're talking at them with some message that came from a white consultant in D.C. So what we did was we spent a lot of time listening to these voters before we even started talking about what our platform would look like.
So with that, have you heard from any of those so-called Democratic strategists? Have you heard from other folks in North Carolina? Because in the last election, Tom Tillis did around 15-18% among African Americans, also with black men. And this is the man who was the architect of the voter suppression law there in North Carolina. I keep saying the only way Sherry Beasley is going to win in North Carolina is that they're going to have to not just focus on Raleigh, Durham, and Charlotte. They have got to do far better in rural North Carolina.
Yeah, and we should be clear about this. I took my shades off because I'm passionate about this. We have left rural North Carolina. Most of the plantations were in the eastern part of the state, which is all rural spaces. It's 7 majority black counties out there. And what happens, the Democratic parties put resources in eastern North Carolina, but what they call eastern North Carolina is Raleigh and Durham. There's a unique set of problems people east of Raleigh and Durham that people in Raleigh and Durham are not suffering through. And as long as we continue, we don't have to win in rural spaces, but we have to lose better.
You have to close the margin. You can't lose 90-10, 80-20, 70-30. You lose 65-35, 60-40. That's the piece. That's how Democrats also lose in Texas. Republicans roll up major numbers in other parts of the state, And so that puts more pressure on you to turn out big in your major cities.
Absolutely. That's why Texas is one of our green states. We are in the 31 most eastern counties in Texas. Every day, all day, every year, talking to black men. Even though it's only 66,000 black men in those counties, I know if those brothers turn out, more than 60% of those brothers haven't voted in 5 consecutive federal elections. And that ain't their fault. The Democratic Party has no infrastructure out there. Organizations that say they care about black people have no infrastructure out there. So we're out there trying to get these brothers to go to the poll, not saying that voting is revolutionary, once again, but it is a tool that we can't continue to leave in our toolbox because there's so much plaguing us.
Here's what's interesting. So someone here said, Valencia Marks, what are we getting for voting Democrat? High inflation, housing, gas, food crisis, open border, etc. Well, first of all, that's a lie, because the reality is a party, Republican or Democrat, has nothing to do with gas prices
at all.
These people here's what people understand, and we've broken this down on the show. We had a surplus of gas during COVID. Nobody was driving, and guess what? Gas prices were very low. Well, they cut production. So then when it began to open up, we used the surplus. Now we're running from behind because production had been closed. Now they're trying to ramp it up. There are 9,000 drilling permits that have been approved by the government the gas company's not using. So Valencia, you're lying.
Yeah,
you're literally lying.
Yeah.
And then you talk about housing. I showed this stat. For the last several decades, we built on average 20 million homes in each decade. In the last decade, America built 5.8 million homes. Last decade, Valencia, the last time we built that fewer homes was in the 1930s.
Oh wow.
So all these people again with these stupid talking points, blaming you again. The last decade, 5.8 million homes. So the reason we have a housing crisis is because we haven't built.
Yep. More people, less houses. I also should add to what you're saying because it is a lie, and I'm glad you said it frankly because we allow silliness like what this talking point is to become part of our national conversation when we should just be direct. Also, the largest oil producer in the world went to war. A war of aggression against Ukraine. So that also has a problem and something to do with the fact that we're paying these high prices for gas. And inflation is not an American problem. We have inflation going on across the country. Across the world.
Every industrialized nation in the world right now has high inflation.
Absolutely.
France, Germany.
Absolutely.
We can go on and on and on. So yeah, this ain't an American thing. And again, it's the folk who fall for the okie doke, who also these same folks who don't want to own up to Trump and the Republicans when they came in. They blew up the deficit with their spending as well. We talked about yesterday where the United States Senate wants to give the Defense Department $45 billion more dollars, even above what Biden is asking for. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm sorry. It's been escalating. I remember, and I pulled the story up, when they signed the John McCain bill, the budget was $716 billion. Now the Senate wants to sign a bill that's $870+ billion.
Right.
I'm like,
right.
Really?
Right.
But then we can't afford other programs.
We can't afford other programs. I think what people forget is we have the capacity to afford everything we need to. We just choose not to.
Again, one of the things that Reverend Barber's been talking about has been the Biden administration's refusal to meet with them. They want to meet with him and Reverend Liz Theo Harris. He said, no, we want you to meet with low and affected workers. And in fact, right now he's talking about a woman in Alabama who died because of health care. Let's quickly go to the stage and we'll come back.
On this land where our First Nation brothers and sisters lived free. We come here from every corner because there are unnecessarily 140 poor and low-wealth people in this country. That's 43% of the nation, 52% of our children, 66 million white people, 26 million black people, 60.9% of black people, 68% of Latinos and natives, and more than 60% of Asians who are entangled in the unjust weeds of poverty and bound up by the interlocking realities of systemic racism, voter suppression, refusal to pay a living minimum wage, bad tax policy, ecological devastation, denial of health care, inequitable educational opportunity, the war economy, and the false moral narrative of religious nationalism. Here we are today. This level of poverty and greed in this, the richest nation in the history of the world, constitutes a moral crisis and a fundamental failure of the policies of greed. These numbers and interlocking injustices are not just about debates between right and left and moderate. No, this language and categories are too puny for what we face. They represent a crisis of democracy, a shared failure to center poor and low-wealth people, the very people who are the greatest moral leaders and survivors in our society and the true bellwether of our well-being. But there is something else that is even more grotesque. The regressive policies which produce 140 million poor and low-wealth people are not benign. They are forms of policy murder. We know that prior to the pandemic, poor people died at a rate of 700 people a day, 250,000 a year. Poor people have been 2 to 5 times more likely to die from COVID during this pandemic so far. And we know this can't simply be explained away by vaccination results. It's related to the discrimination in our policies toward poor and low-wealth people. On Monday of this week, the National Academy of Science said more than 330,000 lives could have been saved during the pandemic if we had simply had a policy of universal health care for all people. A policy which is a human right that should never be connected to your job, but always connected to your humanity. Because many of the people you see here today know these realities, know this pain, this injustice, and this death from personal experience. We knew that we must gather here. We must have, over and over again, a moral meeting in these streets. We are not unlike our forerunners who sought to mend every flaw of this nation. The abolitionists, those who fought against lynching, those who have stood for families, those who have stood for labor rights, those who have stood for civil rights and women's rights and LGBTQ rights and the right for women to control their own bodies, those who have stood for peace in the time of war, those who have demanded that children be treated right, and those who have demanded just immigration policies in a nation full of immigrants. All of these people have come to these same streets to openly expose the moral crises throughout our history. This sacred moral procession has been required at various points in our history to exorcise the demons of greed and hate and racism in our society. They have all recognized that there comes a time we must have a moral meeting, and such is this moment now. This is why we are here, and we won't be silent anymore. We come to this mass Poor People's Low-Wage Workers Assembly and Moral March on Washington and to the polls because we must meet this moment. We must meet in the streets. We must meet at the ballot box. We must meet at the political suites of this nation. We have to cry loud from the pulpits and the public square. and we know we're on solid ground from which to raise our critique. Our great moral and constitutional traditions, they give us solid ground to declare that we must establish justice and ensure equal protection under the law for all people. We know that when the nation is moving away from the principles of life, liberty, justice, the pursuit of happiness for all people, and there's been a long train of abuses, and the nation has become more profitable for a few and less perfect for others, we must correct the nation, and we can't be silent anymore. We know that our greatest moral traditions in Scripture call us to stand up, call us to mourn and refuse to be quiet. Is it not Isaiah that said, "Woe unto those who legislate evil and rob the poor of their rights and make women and children their prey"? Holy Scripture from every place calls us to repentance in a time of crisis. From Amos to Isaiah to the Gospels of Jesus, we are told we must gather a remnant of people who are willing to cry in the public square. We know that there are moments when in the anointing we must declare good news to the poor and recovery of sight to the blind. We must remind every nation that no matter how great she claims her gross domestic product is, or how powerful her military is, every nation is under divine judgment until they fully care and fully love for the least of these, the hungry, the outcast, and the left out. And we know that every religious tradition, from Judaism to Islam to Unitarianism, not only believe the divine moral of the universe exists, but moves us by the Spirit to bend the moral law with the weight of our nonviolent actions. Today, make no mistake, America, we are determined to bend the moral law right here once again in America. We are resolved not to stop until we no longer have to fight. We are resolved not to stop until we no longer have breath to breathe or strength to give. We are the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, and together with our allies, we won't be silent anymore. We are not here to beg, but to demand. What we're demanding is not radical, it's simply right. We've come to put a face and a voice on these numbers of poverty, to show that behind them, inside them, are real people and real lives. They are us, we are them, and we won't be silent anymore. The very fact that these realities exist means, Dr. West, that we are engaged in a moment that is constitutionally inconsistent, morally indefensible, politically insensitive, economically insane. As the great prophet of the Harlem Renaissance declared, we must take back our mighty land again. America has never been America to me, but we swear this oath that America will be. We must say with our bodies, with our voices, with our organizing, with our preaching, with our standing, even with our suffering and our sacrifices, that we won't be silent or unseen or unheard anymore. As long as there are 140 million poor and low-wealth people in this country, and we know it doesn't have to be this way, we won't be silent anymore. As long as there are 87 million people who are uninsured or underinsured, and everybody in the Congress gets free health insurance while they vote against us to have the same thing, we won't be silent anymore. As long as caving to the lobbying of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, 49 Republicans and 2 Democrats refused to vote fairly and denied 32 million people just last year a $15 an hour minimum living wage. We won't be silent anymore. As long as we know this nation will never really deal with inflation and recession until she does right by the poor and low wealth of this country. As long as we have the hypocrites and their audacity to call people essential workers during the pandemic and then treat them like they're expendable when it comes to health care and wages. As long as 2 Democrats and 4 Republicans block child income tax credits, lift folk up for a few months out of poverty, and then drop them right back to hell in poverty, we won't be silent anymore. As long as people keep asking, how much will it cost? Rather than ask the real cost question, how much does it cost for things to stay like they are? As long as there are the lies of scarcity and the lies we don't know what to do, as long as we have the stealing of native lands and unjust immigration, as long as your health and your income can be determined by who you love, as long as people go to bed hungry, as long as millions of our neighbors are homeless or facing homelessness, as long as 4 million people can get up every morning and buy unleaded gas and can't buy unleaded water, as long as our military spends twice as much as Iran, Iraq, Russia, and North Korea combined, and we know that just 10% of that bloated military budget could provide health care and public education, we won't be silent anymore. As long as 55 million people are facing voter suppression, let us be clear, we are not simply here for a day. This assembly is to declare the full commitment of a fusion coalition. If you didn't know America, you better ask somebody. We are black, we are brown, we are native, we are Latino, we are Asian, we're young, we're old, we're gay, we're straight, we're trans, we're independent, we're from California to the Carolinas, from Massachusetts to Mississippi, from Georgia to the Great Lakes, from the Apache lands to Alabama to Appalachia, from Montana to Missouri, from Alaska to Arkansas, and we ain't going nowhere. Now is the time for a third Reconstruction. We are the rejected who've been rejected by the politics of trickle-down economics and rejected by neoliberalism. 150 years ago, black and poor whites built the first Reconstruction. Over 50 years ago, black and white people and Latinos joined people of faith and followed the prophetic servant leader, Martin Luther King, and took on racism, poverty, and militarism, and a second Reconstruction. But now is our time for a third Reconstruction. We are not an insurrection, but we are a resurrection. And this is the day that the Lord hath made. This is the day that the stones that the builders rejected are coming together to be the cornerstone of a new reality. And so make no mistake, from the State House to the Congress to the White House, this is no one day on and one day off. This is a movement until children are protected, until sick folk are healed, until low-wage workers are paid, until immigrants are treated fairly, until affordable houses are provided, until the atmosphere, the land, and the water are protected until saving the world. And diplomacy and living in peace is more important than blowing up the world. We won't be silent anymore. If we've got to march, we'll march. If we've got to engage in nonviolent direct action, we'll engage. If we've got to build more tension with the media, we'll do it. If we have to ask workers to make election day a labor strike day, as long as God is God, as long as politicians are hurting the people that God wants healed, we say to America, you have made a promise. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. What a day that will be. But until then, this promise is non-negotiable, and we won't be silent or unseen or unheard anymore.
William J. Barber. So let me explain to you what Reverend Barber wanted to do. Normally when you look at these mass marches, you have all of these other speakers, and then they set it up as the main speaker with this large speech. He purposely chose not to do that. He said I talked to him before. He said he did not want to do that. He wanted to give his speech early on because one of the things that he has said in this particular effort, they don't want this whole deal as this sort of seminal figure, this one figure. It's designed to elevate the voices of the affected. So what's going to happen is a little bit later, you're going to actually hear poor and low-wage workers on that stage. And so he wanted to speak early on to sort of frame this event for all those who are following. A lot of other folks, it's about the ego of building up, and then all of a sudden they come in and give this final large speech where all the attention is on them. And Reverend Dr. William J. Barber said that's not what he wanted to do. And so powerful words there as he sort of laid the foundation for what this day is all about. We're going to go back to talking to Mondale Robinson, the activist, and also now a newly elected mayor. When do you get sworn in? It's June 21st. What you heard Reverend Barber say there, he laid out an agenda, and I love what he said, that on election day, make it a labor strike.
Yes. I think election day should be a day off work anyway, should be a national holiday. I feel like we already vote on Tuesday, which is an outdated idea anyway. We're no longer farmers, and we don't need a day to travel to city center to vote. So I think the fact that it's not a national holiday serves one purpose, and that's to keep so many people out of the voting booth. But I think what Reverend Dr. Barber said that was so powerful and moving to me was the fact that reminding people that this is not the first second, but the third Reconstruction.
Right.
Third Reconstruction. That's something to think about if you understand history and what happened in the second Reconstruction, and definitely what happened in the first one.
Well, and I've been using that a lot on the show as well. I was talking to John Hope Bryant, same thing. I said this is really the language we should be using, because we talk about reconstruction. You talk about, yes, reconstructing the nation, redefining our public policy, what our priorities are, what we invest our money in, and we talked about a little bit earlier. What I really want our people to do is to understand that our level of involvement has to get larger and broader. And I hear people say, well, what has the Democrats done for you? No. What have you properly demanded? What have you demanded of them? And then how do you then get in their face to say, this is how we're going to penalize you? What you talked about, y'all threw out an incumbent. Absolutely. And that, to me, is what drives me crazy when I hear people say, well, what have we gotten? What have we gotten? I have seen what happens when people show up and they put pressure. I've said to alphas and deltas and AKAs, I said we should be going to mobilize and going to everyone. And you imagine what happens when 100 men walk in black and gold, in purple and gold, in blue and white, coming in their colors, and then the sororities, and then Eastern Star, then Prince Hall Mason, and the Links, and all these organizations. They're going to be saying, okay, who them people? Why they here? And I said, now imagine if we then rotate. Okay, y'all take the city council, y'all take the county meeting this month, y'all take the school board meeting this month, and then the black community at large who's not in the organizations will finally say, oh, now we see y'all and see what y'all doing. Yeah. That's mobilization organization.
Yeah. I think we are obligated in the black community to use every entity that's already organized to change what's happening and how politics play. I always cringe when I hear black people say, what are our leaders going to do for us? That's not, if you're asking that question, you've already failed. You're turning over your fate to someone else. Tell your leaders what they need to be leading.
When in fact most of those people belong to entities, so they should be asking that question in the meeting.
Immediately.
What are we doing? Look, I had somebody send some tweet. Did they invite the Boule to the Poor People's Campaign? I'm in the Boule. I'm here.
I love it.
So again, that's one of those dumbass lines we just sort of threw out. What the Boule doing? Again, I'm here, and when I'm in the Boule meeting, I'm saying, what we doing? See, so that's why when people throw this stuff, it's silly to me. The real deal, it's a lot of us who belong to groups who want to stay safe and only stay in our walls. That's just the real deal.
I'm glad you said it, brother, because, I mean, that's a dangerous position to take. I'm not saying nothing's going to happen to you physically, but, people get upset that you said that. But that's the fact. So many black people in our space are comfortable.
Yes.
And they're not willing to sacrifice their comfort for the Poor People's Campaign or the platform of the. So I think what happens is we owe it to our people, all of us in our position, to say, okay, I don't need an invitation to be on stage,
right?
To understand that I need to be here.
There you go.
I don't need an invitation to be a speaker, but I still need to be
there.
There
You go.
So
well, that's why for me, when I look at all these so-called new black media people, legacy black media people, I'm being perfectly honest, y'all. This is the media riser. If these cameras were on us, so for everybody to understand, there's media right here. There's media that's below us. As I look down here, I don't see a whole bunch of other black media. I'm talking about again, you got Urban One, all the Radio One stations, TV One, Black Enterprise, Essence, Blavity, The Griot. We can go on and on. Again, where are they? So therefore, what are folks covering? That to me is also part of the problem, because we're not properly informing our audience. And for me, that's why I don't cover no health and beauty stuff. I ain't covering all the entertainment, that gossip stuff. This is the kind of stuff that we got to be telling our people about so they understand the issues.
As we sit in the midst of the third Reconstruction.
Right.
And I didn't even think about what you said and all of those organizations that you named, and I would say the Root too. And
all of them.
It's unbelievable that I looked down when you said that, and none of them here. So what
and
are they covering? What
so
are they
look,
covering?
if they are here circulating, I want to actually see it. But here's the other deal. Even if they're not here, why aren't they running the Poor People's Campaign feeds on their social media, on the digital platforms. And so you don't actually have to do what we did, bring in our cameras and lights, everything. You can easily grab that RTMP key and the stream key. I'm just, again, this is the issue that I have when we talk about our entities. Who's actually there speaking to the actual issues? And see, when I got the folks out there who are the haters, who love doing videos about what I'm saying, I'm like, but y'all ain't showing up.
Right.
Y'all, you ain't on the ground. Right. And that's part of the deal. I think that what has to happen is we have to be willing to challenge ourselves. We want to challenge everybody else. We've got to challenge ourselves to do more.
Absolutely. And I think we I tell people all the time, this is the reason the iPhone was the greatest, and this is not an advertisement for Apple, but the reason the iPhone was the greatest invention since the combustible engine is because Steve Jobs gave the world what we needed and didn't know we needed, right? I feel like as long as media companies are feeding us beauty stuff, gossip, Kim Kardashians of the world will continue to make more money, and black people will suffer because of it. I'm not saying that Kim Kardashian is the only thing that's going on in our community, but the media spend more time talking about that divorce than they do about issues like this.
There's I have had a complete ban on anything on my shows Kardashian since 2009.
That's smart, brother.
I don't care. I'm just like, my deal is I ain't talking about it. Reality show contestants cannot come on my show.
Right.
Now, if they come on, if they're discussing a policy issue, they can come on and discuss that, but I'm not going to refer to their show.
Right.
See, again, this is the issue for me is what are we feeding our minds? And what I keep saying is black people are laughing ourselves to death. We're so focused on sports and entertainment, and we're locked into that. And that to me is a fundamental problem. And then we go, oh, I didn't know. Well, you didn't know because you were watching some bullshit over here versus feeding something. Y'all, just a few moments ago, a young brother, Tank Parker, if y'all go to my social media, he walked up to me. He was with his mom or dad, and he walked up to me and handed me some money if I bring the Funk Fan Club. He's watching the show. Y'all, he wasn't more than 9 or 10. And so I have other young kids that walk up to me. My mama watches the show. Your daddy watches the show. That's what I'm talking about. What mama and daddy watches, what mama and daddy reads, what mama and daddy listens to has a direct impact on what their children are listening to, reading, and watching. So when mama and daddy is informed on the issues, their children are informed. So now you have a person come 18, 19, 20 who ain't walking around clueless.
Right. And not only are they not clueless, they can't be hoodwinked, as Martin said. I think that's a powerful statement about this fact that we're so comfortable laughing, trying to pretend that our reality isn't what it is. And I also believe that this is why we have so many trash politicians that are elected, re-elected, and continually re-elected, even though they're not doing anything. I'm so over representation being enough. Just because you look like me, that's not enough. I mean, if you look like me and you're elected, you should be doing so much more. Anyway, I think the difference between you and a lot of people in the media, and I know you're not supposed to go to war with people with with a printer, but I'm telling the truth, is how many people did what you did? You said I'm done with this roller coaster that these white people keep trying to put me on, and you just went uncensored.
Well, and the thing though is, even when I was at CNN, I never left Black on Media.
Yeah, right. That's fact.
I never
that's
left.
Fact.
And that was the thing. People like, oh, you started wearing African outfits when you left CNN. Fool, I got married in one. 21 years ago.
Clearly, they ain't get the invitation.
Which predated CNN. Again, that's sort of the thing there. Mondale Robinson, y'all, gets sworn in on Tuesday, newly elected mayor in North Carolina. Man, we appreciate it. Keep speaking. And again, teaching these other people how you can win with a strong progressive policy in a rural state.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure being around you, brother.
I appreciate it, Mondale.
Peace.
Thanks a bunch. Folks, we've got some affected workers who are now speaking on stage right now. Let's go back to the Moral Assembly 2022 main stage.
Don't have 2 bathrooms. 2, you go to the bathroom, they time you. When you get back,
You got a message across the screen from HR. I'm like, what's going on? That's like, you was away from your machine 20 minutes. I said, I went to the bathroom. I can't go to the bathroom? Pretty much they told me I can't go to the bathroom. You fired. Yes, they fire you for being off your machine. They call it TOT. That's time on task. That's why I'm here. I'm not giving up. That's why I'm here to fight. I need everybody. Everybody. We're going to do this. That's why I came from Alabama. We're going to do this. They tried to fire me on medical leave.
Give it up for our dear sister. Give it up.
I had a surgery last year on this arm. Guess what? I had another surgery in March.
Give it up
this
for my
year.
sister so we can have our next sister to
It's
come.
still not well.
Go get it.
That's why I'm ready. Regardless of your race or nationality, we're going to fight.
All right. God bless you.
Forward together. My name is Kenny Alcocer. I'm with Unión de Vecinos and the Los Angeles Tenants Union. I am here today representing the California Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. On Tuesday, June 14th, we got on a bus to be here with y'all today. Being here today was our duty, for on this bus, we are bringing with us our dead, 92,085 who have died from COVID. We are bringing 2.6 million undocumented folks from California, 18,000 immigrants that are on the border from Central America and Haiti that are seeking asylum. We are bringing the more than 1.5 million tenants that were not able to pay their rent and are facing evictions. We are bringing the more than 161,000 homeless folks in our communities. We are here today because we see that in Los Angeles and in this nation, there is no political will to finish poverty, systemic racism, ecological devastation, or the war economy. We are here to demand housing for all, rent forgiveness, adequate health care for all, a living wage with benefits, access to affordable and healthy food, to abolish ICE, to abolish the police. We are here to protect voting rights. We are here to fight for immigration reform. We are here. We are the poor and dispossessed, and we are here. We are here to say, solo el pueblo salva el pueblo. We are here, we are saying we will not be silenced anymore.
Stay up here with Liz. Stay up here. No, nobody stands alone. Get close to her.
Somebody's been hurting our people. It's gone on far too long, and we won't be silent anymore. Now, Washington, D.C., these yet to be United States, it does not have to be this way. This is not as good as it gets, America. Poverty is not inevitable. We cannot accept abandonment amidst abundance. And we will not go back to normal or business as usual, because normal is the stories we just heard. Normal is 140 million poor and low income. Normal is 700 people dying every day from poverty. Instead, our call, our response is fight poverty, not the poor.
That's right.
Fight poverty,
not the poor.
Fight poverty,
not the poor.
Our charge is to take away our poverty, not our children. Take away our poverty, not our children. We must proclaim everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody in, nobody out. bottom. Everybody rises. Because that is who we are. We're the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, a moral fusion movement of the poor and activists and all who will not stand for death, denial of health care, suppression of our votes, and everything of injustice that we're experiencing. We're here, responding to these stories, lifting up the truth of our nation, putting faces and voices on immense injustice, but showing also where our hope really is. Hope comes from the bottom, from those most directly impacted by the profound evils of America. It's the poor. It's the low wage. It's the locked up, looked over, and left out. It's those excluded and exploited who are the very social force who can change this society, unsettle our complacency, organize a third reconstruction, and fully address poverty and low wages from the bottom up. So yes, America, we're here. We're poor. We're not going anywhere. We have come together. We will stay together. We will transform this nation from the bottom up.
Yes,
We'll break through that lie that poverty and death are the will of God. We'll break through that lie that some lives are more precious than others, that it's impossible for us to unite and organize, or that the rich and powerful are coming to save us. Because when we cry justice, when we cry power, when we organize from the grassroots, when we take bold action, it can be done.
Yes,
Si se puede. Forward together.
Not one step back.
Forward together.
Not one step back.
Forward together.
Not one step back. Give it up. Coming to the stage now from Washington, David Lee. From Massachusetts, Minister Savina Mark. From Georgia, Jamila Hill. And responding to these stories, none other than the Reverend Dr. Bernice King at this time. Would you all invite them all as they come?
Forward together. My name is David Lee. I am a Korean American immigrant, and I've been a substitute teacher for 8 years. And I'm currently a graduate student at Seattle University. Growing up, hearing the words alien, illegal, or go back to where you came from made me feel unwelcome in the United States. My parents, with English being their second language, also faced many discriminations in the United States. After 20 long years, my parents finally became a naturalized U.S. citizen. But even with their citizenship, my parents continue to struggle today. My father is 64 years old and is a sign builder with a meniscus tear on his knees. But because of our poor healthcare system, he has not been able to get his knees properly treated. My mother is 57 years old and works as a caregiver to assist with the bills. But because of my parents' financial debt, I do not know when they will be able to retire. Also, with the recent rise in Asian hate crimes, I have realized that regardless of my parents' immigration status, they are not safe in the United States. In response, I have heard our government advocate for the AAPI community. As a Korean American immigrant, I want to say to our leaders in government, true advocacy for the AAPI community begins by not only addressing the hate crimes, but by providing mental health resources and universal health care for poor and working class people. Student loan forgiveness for students like me who would like to pursue their dreams without being in debt. Finally, as a teacher, I want a better future and planet for our children by addressing gun violence and working together to solving our climate crisis. We are the Poor People's Campaign. We won't be silent anymore. We won't be silent anymore.
I'm Sabina Martin from Roxbury, Massachusetts. Poverty-related issues led me to this fight. It's a shame that in this nation I experienced social domestic violence of poverty. I served in the military. I had to fight years for my military benefits. In Massachusetts, we have over 85,000 veterans that have incomes below $35,000. This is the war on the poor. Domestic tranquility is not being secured. I felt cheated, thinking how this country would rather appropriate funds for national defense, having the power to declare war instead of providing funds to lift the load of systemic poverty. And this is wrong. A visible expression of homelessness or poverty is homelessness. That's not promoting the general welfare. It's promoting poverty. While the rich have a winter mansion and a summer home, I have no home. This is social violence in every form. No house, no health, and no hope equals death in the streets. The rich continue to exploit the poor. Unfair housing policies lock us out of affordable apartments. Rents are high and wages are too low.
Teach him.
We need to cancel the rents. This is why we are fighting. We may be homeless, but we are not helpless. This is why I am in this movement, the Poor People's Campaign. We are the hope of tomorrow. I am one of the 140 million. While vacant high-rise buildings sit empty, stomachs are empty. Where is the security and blessings of liberty, I ask? How can we go to church on Sunday and walk over a homeless person on Monday? No! We are the workers, and we are the people that built this country, and this is ours. And we won't be silent anymore.
Thank you, Sabina.
Forward together. My name is Jamel Hill, and I'm from Georgia. And I want to talk about the promised land. Abraham and Martin heard the voice of God directing them and listened. Between that time, our founding fathers dreamt of a promised land, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And while we may have crossed into the promised land, now is the time to do more. Like our forefathers, the work is not done after crossing, and now is the time to subdue, to overcome poverty and systemic racism, to bring under control the trauma afflicted on our children, as almost 50% of children in Georgia are born and raised in poverty. In Georgia, almost half of our children grow up worried, unhappy, frustrated, and anxious. There are few opportunities, but an abundance of feelings of worthlessness and hopelessness. Our children are born without hope. Our children are bullied and judged. They don't get to go on school trips, but they do get to go home every day to gun violence. Overcrowded homes that offer no safe place to do homework or play. Our children are often embarrassed. They lack education and they inherit poverty. We have health issues. We are exploited for labor while we suffer from inflation and lack an ability to invest. We suffer from corruption, disease, insufficiencies, terrorism, high crime, mental illness, starvation, and drug abuse. Here in America, where we have the worst poverty rates out of the world's top 20 25 economies, we have the working poor who cannot afford health care or are not offered health care. In Georgia, we have poorly funded, understaffed volunteer medical clinics for those that work 40-plus hours every week, but aren't offered health care. We have homeless people paying $1,500 a month for Airbnbs, while others have homes with no lights, no waters, tin roofs, held down by cinder blocks, molded walls, and floors. The working poor who cannot afford a set of 4 new tires without robbing Peter to pay Paul. The working poor who, if the AC, fridge, or stove goes out, we can't afford to buy another. While the rich vacation in their 2nd, 3rd, and 4th homes, we just want to be able to go to the grocery stores. We just want to provide a nutritious meal to our family. But fruit is $15, a salad is $15, and food is $10, and minimum wage is only $7. Y'all, we won't be silent anymore.
That's it. Let us welcome Reverend Dr. Bernice King to respond and say to America why we must listen to these voices.
Forward together. 54 years ago, my father launched the Poor People's Campaign to revolutionize the economic landscape of our nation. Unfortunately, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. did not live long enough to see it come to fruition. However, on June 19, 1968, my mother, Coretta Scott King, was here in our nation's capital during the initial Poor People's Campaign to deliver a very powerful message on poverty. She stated, and I quote, "Too long we suffered pious platitudes and made faulty promises to our less fortunate." She made the appeal that poverty is not only a long-standing evil of this nation, but an actual act of violence against the dignity, livelihood, and humanity of its citizens. 54 years later, poverty still has a grip on the soul of our nation. So today, as a bearer of my parents' legacy, and as the CEO of the King Center, I join in solidarity with the chorus of voices that say we won't be silent anymore. Thank you, Reverend Barber, and thank you, Reverend Theo Harris, for helping to keep this part of my father and mother's legacy alive. And thank you for keeping the movement going. Today, we are here to awaken the conscience of the citizens of this nation. We're calling upon those who have ears to hear, tongues to speak, and hearts to respond, to join the movement to rid this nation of the evil and violence of poverty. You have heard the real stories of those who suffered the injustices of our nation, a nation that refuses to open their eyes to the inhumane realities of poverty, a violation of the dignity, worth, and value of people who are made in the image of God and after God's likeness. As we listen to these voices, we can attest to the reality that poverty in all of its forms is violence. We have a moral responsibility to speak up, to stand up, to show up, and never shut up until all of our brothers and sisters can rise from the shackles of oppression, depression, suppression, and the real violence of poverty, until they are set free to live with the dignity of a livable wage, humane living conditions, just working conditions, access to affordable health care and housing, and the freedom to participate in government, the freedom to prosper in life, and the freedom to peacefully coexist. When I was growing up, my mother used to always remind me and my siblings that somebody has to cut off the chain of violence. Well, I'm asking all people of goodwill and conscience to join us in cutting off this chain of the violence of poverty.
I'm asking all citizens, power brokers, and politicians of this nation to pledge their voices and their work toward the elimination of poverty. For those who would argue that there is a deficit of human resources, my response is absolutely not. The deficit is in the human will. 54 years ago, when my father launched the Poor People's Campaign, he called for a revolution of values and a radical redistribution of wealth. I make that same call to our nation today. And do not be fooled into thinking that the issue of poverty is someone else's problem. As my father said, we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. What affects one directly affects all indirectly. Have you considered how the existence of poverty in our nation affects all indirectly? Think about it. The last time I checked, the least of these is quickly turning into the most of these. If the current economic crises or my sisters and brothers' stories today haven't put you on notice, let me inform all people of goodwill, even those that believe they are exempt from this epidemic, that poverty won't stop at low-income workers. Poverty won't stop at the suburban middle class. Poverty won't even stop with the business owners and business executives. Poverty is a system that will continue to consume more and more people, beget more violence, disenfranchise millions, and leave even more underserved until our nation and our people commit to creating the beloved community to dismantle it. And it's going to take all of us to do our part to make this happen. We must work from several different angles. While there are those in our society who are turning a blind eye and a deaf ear to the ever-increasing rent for poor and low-wage workers, stay tuned, because I'm working on a pathway to transition them from being renters to becoming homeowners without the requirement of a credit score. As I stand here today, hearing this pain and suffering that my brothers and sisters who are in the grip of economic injustices and inequities are enduring, the evidence is very clear that this nation is guilty of violence, of theft, of oppression, of exploitation, of abuse, of extreme neglect, and the absolute abandonment of the poor, and should be indicted on the misappropriation of resources and the complete misalignment of values, which, if corrected through nonviolent direct action, could lead to the total, direct, and immediate abolition of poverty. Too many systems, practices, and politics have sought to silence these voices that we are hearing today and these stories that are being shared. But we refuse to allow silence to reign supreme, because I hear a cry coming up from the backside of this nation, from the depths of poverty where life ain't been no crystal stair. I hear a cry from the mothers and children that have been left by the wayside. I hear a cry from the cultures that have been suppressed by the hands of poverty. I hear a cry from the hungry, the tired, and the forgotten. I hear a fiery cry coming up from the 140 million Americans that won't be quenched by the lukewarm words of apathetic politicians, systemic racism, or the presence of war. A cry that won't be quenched by corporate greed or excessive materialism, but will require a great reckoning and realignment of our morals as a nation. Until we get there, though we won't be silent anymore. So I encourage you to keep sharing your stories. My brothers and sisters, keep standing up and keep speaking out. Keep your eyes on the prize and know that God Almighty is with us. God's words reminds us that the darkest hour is always before the dawn. So don't you stop now. Don't you get weary in well-doing. Walk together, children. Don't you get weary. Keep working together, children. Don't you get weary. Keep struggling and holding on together, children. Don't you get weary. Keep mobilizing and organizing and strategizing, Reverend Barbara and Reverend Theo and all the people, and don't get weary. Fuss if you got to, fight if you got to, but get over it together, children, and don't get weary. But don't forget to pray together, children, because you might just get weary. But one day, if we continue to walk together, children, we will be able to eliminate poverty, and a new day will dawn. But until then, we won't remain silent anymore.
We had to give Dr. King and Coretta Scott King's theme some extra time because we want you to know your father's death is our resurrection. You can stand a little longer and hear the rest of these 30 states. And while we're standing, can we sing about 1 minute? Ain't gonna let nobody turn us around. Come on, band. Come on, Yara. Everybody put those hands together and sing it like they sung it in the Civil Rights Movement. Preacher. I need y'all to take 30 seconds, put the signs down, the placards down, put your hands together, and let's shake the foundation and sing it. Ain't gonna let no Congress turn us around. Ain't gonna let no senator turn us around. Can we say it to the top of our voices? Come on, everybody. have a meeting like this and not have a strategy for after the meeting. That'd be foolish. So let me tell you what we're going to do after the meeting. Number one, we demand that all congresspersons in the United States publicly acknowledge the reality and pain of 140 million poor and low-wealth people and stop lying and saying that it's only 39 million people. Number two, we demand every congressperson commit to creating and supporting legislation that reflects a third Reconstruction agenda. Now, we haven't heard, and I don't know what the problem is. I know the phones work and the emails work. So let me say it here. We demand, come on, Liz, we demand a White House Poverty Summit with President Biden to allow this administration to meet with a delegation of poor and low-wealth people, religious leaders, and economists now. Number four, the campaign will engage in massive mobilization and outreach through every means available to us. Number five, we pledge to return to Washington, D.C. in September and bring 5,000 poor and low-wealth people and religious leaders and 100 economists in a nonviolent direct action to walk all day in the halls of Congress. We won't be silent anymore. And today, this campaign announces its launch of a nationwide effort for the next 143 days to register and educate poor and low-wealth communities to vote in every election for candidates that commit to addressing poverty and low wage. And number seven, we declare that we are a movement that votes, a movement that fights, a movement that marches, a movement that uses nonviolent truth and love, and a movement that ain't never going nowhere no time soon. Coming to the stage now, at this moment, to speak to us, because we want America to hear herself, we're bringing Guadalupe de la Cruz from Florida. And you probably see numbers of poverty on the screen. It should be. From New England, Nebraska, Angela Montalvo. From D.C., because we wouldn't come here and not talk about poverty in D.C. and the need for statehood. Akula Ali. And responding to them will be Latasha Brown of Black Voters Matter.
Florida, where you at? Hola, mi gente. My name is Guadalupe de la Cruz from Homestead, Florida. There is a phrase that I grew up with all of my life. Hay que trabajar porque nacimos pobres. That means you gotta work because we were born poor. I'm a daughter of immigrants who were farm workers for many, many years. My family often lived paycheck to paycheck. They worked under some of the harshest conditions in South Florida, exploited and abused. Today, I find myself in some of those same positions as my parents. I'm a single mother and can't afford an emergency. And we have been living in a state of emergency for years. There is no way that I will ever be able to give my daughter an opportunity to thrive if I stop working. I am forced to choose between spending time with my daughter and finding a second job to make it happen this month. Fear and embarrassment have kept me from telling my story of struggle. Times when my lights were cut off, not sure if I was gonna make the next car note, or even if I was gonna make rent. I'm here to say enough is enough. We should not be cornered and forced to choose one necessity over another. Florida families should not be under attack. We cannot afford to have people working in unlivable wages. We cannot afford to have no health care. We cannot afford to have families ripped away because of unjust because our stories need to come out of the shadows of shame. And I'm reminding our government that the many stories that you have heard today from my friends should not be happening. 10 million people are not in this current situation by choice, but because government has chose to create systematic laws because they chose to create systematic laws and implementations of oppression. And that's why we're here to say no more.
No more.
Forward together.
Not one step back.
I will not be silent anymore.
My name is Angela Montalvo. I'm one of the tri-chairs of the Nebraska Poor People's Campaign. I joined the Army in 2003, right after high school. I was 17 years old. After about a year, I started experiencing chronic pain. In 2006, I was medically discharged with a 0% disability rating. This means that even though I was medically discharged, I received no disability compensation because the military doctors couldn't find a cause for the pain that I still experience today. I met my husband in the Army while working in military intelligence. From 2007 to 2008, he was overseas. That was the first year of our oldest child's life. As you can imagine, that was quite a challenge for a new family. Since he returned, he's been diagnosed with PTSD, skin cancer, and sarcoidosis, all linked to his service. He's unable to work because of this. Just 2 months ago, the VA began withholding his disability compensation because they made an error in his GI Bill calculations, and now say that we owe the VA more than $20,000. We found out through a letter in the mail. He served his country, and we ended up in debt to the VA. We are just two of the over 34,000 low-income veterans in Nebraska. We make up to 25% of the Nebraska veteran population. There are poor and homeless veterans all over this country. We must stand together to demand an end to this war economy that benefits the wealthy at the cost of poor people's lives and health. We will not be silent anymore.
Yes. Everybody shout it. We will not be silent anymore.
Welcome to D.C. My name is Akoshua Ali. I'm the president of the NAACP Washington, D.C. branch. But more importantly, I'm a D.C. native, a D.C. resident, and I live in Southeast, Ward 7, east of the river here in Washington, D.C. Today, I stand in solidarity with Reverend William Barber and moral allies to end poverty and demand a shift of this moral consciousness in this country. Poverty, voter suppression, unemployment, underemployment, wealth gaps, health care access, environmental injustice, lack of affordable housing, maternal morbidity, and gun violence all continue to suppress vulnerable communities in this country. The gap of poverty and privilege demands change. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, 700 people were dying a day from poverty. The economic devastation of poverty affects all people, people of every race, creed, color, and sexuality. 140 million people are living in poverty, poor, or low wealth in this country. Poverty is not a left or right issue. It is not a Democrat or Republican issue. It is a moral issue. In the words of Reverend William Barber, we do not have a scarcity of resources in this country. We have a scarcity of moral consciousness. So today, we rise to confront systemic racism, poverty, and privilege. We need quality health care, quality housing, quality public education, livable wages, reproductive justice, protecting a woman's right to choose, and we must protect voting rights. But we must demand statehood for the District of Columbia. I can't talk about voting rights without talking about statehood for D.C. Without statehood, the people of D.C. do not have the right to pass our own laws without congressional approval. D.C.'s fight justice.
Yes.
Now, in closing, this is time for us to transform this nation. So when we say stand up, fight back. Stand up,
fight back.
No justice, no peace. Peace and power. Thank you all.
Yes.
By and by, Lord, when the morning comes, and we all the saints will come together as one. We will tell the story how we overcome, and we'll understand it better by and by. Oh, by and by, Lord, when the morning comes, all the saints will come together as one. We will tell the story how we overcome, and we'll understand it better by and by. Amen. There is power, y'all, in our stories. There is power in our stories. Part of what oppression is meant to do is to make us believe that we don't have any power. It's to make us to believe that we don't have purpose. It's to make us believe that there is something else that is needed other than our presence. But I want you to say, my presence is enough. I want you to say it from the dark depths of your spirit, because you need to understand this. It's not about where you went to school. It's not about where we live. It's not about our zip code. My presence is enough. Say it after me. My presence is enough. And so we stand on that principle in this country, that no matter where we live, no matter what my background is, no matter who I love, no matter what I can do, at the end of the day, I am deserving to be treated like a human being. I am deserving of housing. I am deserving of a job that I can take care of myself and my family. I am deserving of health care. I am deserving to be loved and respected and valued. And we got to believe that, brothers and sisters. And so I'm going to ask you to do something for me. Everybody out here, I always ask folks, I want you just to take a moment wherever you are, and I want you to close your eyes. I want you to just take everything out of your mind right now. I want you to close your eyes, and I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to hear this question with your spirit, not with your mind. My question to you is, what would America look like without poverty? What would America look like without racism and sexism and homophobia? What would America look like?
That's it.
Now I want you to open your eyes. I don't know if you were able to see anything, but that is the America that we desire and that we deserve and that we're going to stand for and that we're going to fight for and stand in this space with you. And so in that, as I get ready to end, even in this weekend, as we're coming here in Juneteenth, like this is the Juneteenth celebration will be on tomorrow, where there were enslaved Africans that came to this nation, like in our bodies were sold, our bodies, all of our labor. It has been in that same spirit that this country has exploited the bodies and the work and the wealth and the wisdom of all of us. But no more. No more. Because God said that the last shall be first and the first shall be last. Brothers and sisters, it is time for us to take our rightful place. Because I heard somebody say, oh, freedom, oh, freedom, oh, freedom over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free.
Give it up.
Amen.
Give it up.
Tasha Brown, co-founder of Black Voters Matter. We're joined right now by Reverend Dr. Frederick Douglass Haynes, Friendship West Baptist Church in Dallas, also an alpha man. Of course, Poor People's Campaign co-conveners, Reverend Dr. William J. Barber, our fraternity brother, picking up the mantle of our brother Martin Luther King Jr. as well. Reverend Haynes, this is one of the things that Reverend Barber and I always talk about, and he mentioned from the stage, is that it drives me crazy when folk have marches and protests, but the whole focus is on that day. And what they have done, which is why I have said, Reverend, I stand with you 100%, is they are constantly about mobilizing, organizing, getting data, knowing who's there, collecting the information, and then begin to assemble people and move them when it's necessary. It's a waste to have an event and just for that day.
Right. And one of the things I love about Bishop Barber is he has picked up the mantle of Dr. King so that we organize with an objective, we march with a mission. We are real clear why we are here in terms of continuing the legacy of Dr. King, but then he listed the 5 pieces we're going after in terms of ending the false narrative of religious nationalism, of the war on what? The environment, the war economy, standing up for poor people. We are real clear on why we are here. And again, for me, this is how we celebrate not only the legacy of Dr. King, but how appropriate it's Juneteenth weekend. Juneteenth, and I saw you say this, Juneteenth is not just about going to a park and partying. Juneteenth is about organizing, mobilizing on purpose, because that's the only way we're going to turn this thing around.
And of course, when Bernice King talked, she talked about, of course, her mother, Coretta Scott King, continuing this. She often said, they killed my Martin when he started talking about the money.
Right.
In his book, Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community, he talked about, again, America dealing with economically the poor, the disenfranchised. Right. This is about money.
Right.
And I said earlier, and I tweeted this, that the same weekend right now, Ralph Reed is having his white conservative evangelical conclave going on, and Donald Trump spoke. And it's called the Faith and Freedom Conference, and you ain't going to hear the poor come up
at all
at that. And so Jesus talked about the poor more than anything else, but ain't it amazing that they have a Faith and Freedom Conference and the poor don't get mentioned at all, and none of those white conservative evangelicals would remotely show their face at a Poor People's Campaign.
Right, and the sad reality is, as you said, Jesus said more about the poor than he did about salvation. He said more about the poor and even judged the nations by how they would treat the poor. A lot of times we think it's just individuals. That text says, I'm going to judge the nations. And so I want to know what Bible Ralph Reed is reading from. Oh yeah, it's the Donald Trump Bible. It's an edited Bible. And so whenever we talk about the poor, and this is what got Dr. King in trouble. Dr. King did not get killed simply for marching. He got killed because he was challenging the economics of the nation. He said, it did not cost us anything to integrate a lunch counter. As a matter of fact, they benefited from integration. But it does cost you to actually deal with poverty instead of declaring war on poor people. So this, for me, represents not just King, it represents the King of Kings. If you call yourself about faith and you're not dealing with poor people, then your faith is fake.
And the declaration of that also speaks to the fact that what they have done is they have suggested that if you're poor, you're lazy, you're trifling. No, this is the working poor. They are working.
Thank you. Which represents a system. And so what we're calling for is the overhauling, the transformation of a system where you have poverty as an outcome for 140 million Americans in the richest nation on the planet. And we're watching what? The wealth gap continues to widen. And as the wealth gap widens, some are doing real well during this inflationary time. They are profiting from inflation. That's systemic. That's not laziness on the behalf of individuals who find themselves struggling. And like you said, they are the working poor, working 2 and 3 jobs. In Dallas, our mayor had the nerve to talk about a summer of safety and holding accountable parents and guardians. Well, you're talking about doing that without also increasing wages so they don't have to work 2 and 3 jobs and be away from home. We're talking about the working poor who we have vilified in this country, and that's anti-Christ.
The something else that Reverend Barber said, he said our focus is the next 143 days, and that is knocking on those doors.
Yeah.
I was talking to Mondale Robinson, who just got elected a mayor of a town in North Carolina, 3,000 people, 95% black. But they elected a white Republican mayor last time. He just booted him out. But what Reverend Barber said is that he said it's not that they're not voting. No one ever knocks on their doors. So part of this is also you've got to go to them. You've got to knock on that door. Find out what their issues are. That's what Cliff Albright, LaTosha Brown has done with Black Voters Matter. And so what I keep saying on the show to all these people who are commenting, who are complaining, you can't just sit there and say, well, what have they done? Right. No, what have you demanded of them and put that pressure on them and pushing them? And I keep saying to our audience, go ahead and sit at home and see what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Like, we see exactly what they're going to do. Right. They've made it perfectly clear. Any policy that anybody wants, you're guaranteed not to get if they control the House and Senate.
Oh, it's no question. As a matter of fact, what we've got to recognize is who now chairs committees, who now is appointing judges after 2024.
In fact,
and all of that's local.
Ron Klain tweeted this. Ron Klain tweeted, he's the chief of staff to Biden. He said in 200 years, the U.S. Court of Appeals, in 200 years, I'm just going to read it. It is important. I don't understand why they haven't cut an ad on this. He said, in 200 years, 8 black women have been appointed to the U.S. Court of Appeals in 200 years. Biden has appointed 11 in 2 years.
Wow. And again, that has to do, it starts with our voting. So again, we sit back and do nothing. Nothing leads to worse for us. Let's just be real clear on that. And so it's very important, and they keep, and that's been the refrain here. We won't stay silent anymore. And silence has to do with what? Organizing with an objective to get to the polls. And when we get to the polls, we hold people accountable. Because again, I think you saw the sign I saw in Ghana when I went there a few years ago that said, you know, bad politicians are elected by people, good people who don't vote. So if you want bad policy, don't vote.
And what I am saying, and this is the mistake that people make, I am not, first of all, I don't just give somebody my vote. I'm making a demand. I've made it clear to the Biden White House. I want y'all changing policies when it comes to black-owned media.
Thank you.
See, that's what gets me when we talk about what is your concern.
Right.
I have a black-owned media company. The point I'm making is I'm saying this is what I want, and I'm making demands of somebody who I voted for. That's what I'm supposed to do.
Exactly.
Well, what gets me is when people say, man, you up there begging them folks for money. That's our money. We're constituents.
We paid for it.
I'm sorry. Why should I not be demanding I get a piece of what is ours? In fact, for all the folk out there who need to understand, last year, I sent the federal government $335,000 in taxes.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten that back in advertising.
Thank you.
So for somebody to say I should be making that demand, that's what we're supposed to do. Press those who we elect to say there should be a return on our investment.
Exactly. And again, for me, when you look at procurement opportunities across the board,
1.67% out of
That's
560
an insult.
billion.
And then
that
we
black
wonder why we
companies
don't
get.
have strong black business communities, because we're doing all of the paying and the payment is not an investment. And we have to have enough self-esteem as a people to say, you know, we are entitled to this. We don't believe we are entitled. And you are entitled when you made that investment with your taxes all the time, because here's the bottom line. At the same time as you're not getting back money from your tax investment, guess what? There are those who did not pay as much as you in taxes because of what? Corporate welfare.
That's
Jesse
right.
Jackson calls it. But they
Like
get paid.
how
all the
in
time.
the hell did I pay $335,000 in taxes, but Amazon paid nothing?
Come on. Exactly.
and they earn billions.
Yeah.
Billions. And that's the thing. And so I think I keep saying this. What has to happen in Black America, there has to be a reprogramming of Black America.
No question.
There has to be a massive reprogramming in terms of how we view public policy, how we view what matters. Because I said in Houston, my Juneteenth speech Thursday, if we ain't talking about the money, they ain't listening.
No. And again, we can't forget when Dr. King challenged the economic structure of this country. That's the king everyone is afraid of.
Yes.
They're not afraid of I Have a Dream. They're afraid of
what he said earlier in the speech.
Exactly.
Because that was a radical economic speech.
That was a radical economic speech that they have edited out that part. Dr. King in 1963 was already talking about economic reparations, as it were, for us in that speech, and even later on. And so until we can't celebrate Juneteenth or King legitimately if we're not talking about the money.
That's why I keep telling everybody, don't even play the mountaintop part.
No.
You better play earlier
Oh,
when he
man,
talks
that's
about
dangerous.
redistribute the pain,
That's right.
investing in black banks, boycotting those companies that won't hire us and won't work with us. See, again, that's the King folk don't want to deal with.
no.
They want. I keep saying they want the bobblehead MLK.
Right.
They want the civil rights mascot MLK. But that was a radical visionary, and everybody needs to understand he believed in the guaranteed income.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. He believed in a guaranteed income, a living wage. He was calling for that, towards his death. Don't forget, he goes to Memphis to support striking sanitation
1,100
workers.
sanitation workers.
Yes.
And that was about money.
About the money. And until we refocus our efforts on the money, then again, we're not serious about being a part of what? A capitalistic country.
That's it.
And until we do that, I think King put it this way. Right now we have capitalism for the rich, capitalism for the poor, socialism for the rich. And we got to correct that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Fred, always good to see you.
Good to see you,
Keep
man.
handling your business.
Alphas are doing this.
Well, first of all,
servants of all,
we shall
transcend all. Come on.
We done. All right. Appreciate it. All right, folks. We're going back to the stage right now.
Poor and abandoned young people all over this country by making it possible for everyone in this country to get the health care we need, including mental health care. A lot of our people die young. Overdoses, being homeless in the winter, police brutality, suicide, all of which ties back to poverty and to lack of access to health care. I do the work that I do because I don't want people left on their own to battle with this system the way my family was.
Yes. Now, at this time coming, just before Phyllis, Denise Coleman from I keep saying LA, from Louisiana. But there are some others that are standing with her. Would you all come to the podium now? And they'll introduce themselves. They live in a place called Cancer Alley. What? Cancer Alley. And they are they are refusing to quit fighting for lives. Then after, Katira Daffin and Maya Torlaba. And then Joshua Kupalaya. Is that right? Kapala. And then the mighty Tanya Fogel from Kentucky.
Greetings. I'm Janice Coleman, a native from New Orleans, Louisiana. I am here. I have survived. I am alive, and today I thrive. Why? Because I was sentenced to a concurrent double life sentence. I served 38 years under the old law. That meant that I should have been out after serving the 30 years. And they kept me for another 8 years. Why? Because they lost my file. How many more incarcerated are serving needless time because their files are lost? We are forgotten people. We are poor people. And we are suffering. While I was in prison, my mother died. My husband died. My daughter died. Had the prison system let me out when my time was up under the old law, under old policies and rules, I would have been there. I would have been there to see my daughter, my mother,
that's right,
my husband. They would not let me see her. She passed, and I could not see her when she died. Why? Because I was poor and wrongly kept in prison for an extra 8 years. I am a mother, and I was devastated. I am here to tell you, incarcerated lives matter too. On top of that, I received a letter from Washington, D.C. to the Mississippi Parole Board saying, terminate parole, case closed. The Mississippi Parole Office did not tell me. 9 months had passed, and I still didn't know. Why am I still paying today supervision fee? That's why I started organizing inside. That's why I came outside organizing. And that's why I stand with the Poor People's Campaign. I am resilient. We as a people are resilient. And we won't be silent anymore.
Yes.
Forward together.
Not one step back. Now these two people that are coming, I know somebody says, well, every other state had one speaker. But let me tell you, these two people have literally faced death and fought against death. We had an issue with the buses. Would you all be kind enough to let each of them have a minute to tell why this campaign will not abandon the people in Cancer Alley? And we say that anybody that doesn't go to Cancer Alley doesn't deserve to sit at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Good afternoon. My name is Sharon Levine, and I'm from St. James, Louisiana, a little town in the middle of Cancer Alley. Cancer Alley is an 85-mile stretch between New Orleans and Baton Rouge, and I have 12 industries in my neighborhood within a 10-mile radius. Two members of my organization died with cancer. There's an area in St. James called Burden Lane. It's bombarded with 2 industries, and they are sandwiched in. The industries will not buy them out because they are black. They bought out the white neighbors, but not the black neighbors. Our air is polluted. Our water, we can't drink the water. And people have cancer, other illnesses, and we are dying. We need your help because we need help in St. James. We need help all through the corridor of Cancer Alley. Our politicians vote for industry to come in. They sacrifice our lives to make a profit. So we will not be silent anymore.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm so proud to be here. I'm from the adjoining parish in what's called Cancer Alley. Cancer Alley, worse than that, in their quest, I think, to commit genocide against the poor black people of that 80-mile strip, we have been deemed a sacrificial zone. I want to say that in front of the world. I had to bring that to the attention of the people. Not only have they dubbed us Cancer Alley, they have actually officially said that we are a dispensable people. They came into our community in St. John and put this horrible chemical plant. The DuPont Corporation, along with the Japanese people, Denka, 1,500 feet 1,500 feet away from an all-black elementary school.
That ain't right.
And they have, since our fight against them started in 2016, we've just been informed that they have actually increased. DuPont Dinker has the audacity,
My God,
the temerity. They are such cruel, awful people in seeking corporate profit that they have increased the poisons on that school of 400 to 500 black children as of today.
and my brother, we are not going to leave that alone.
And we will not turn around in our fight. And
Yes.
we will not be silent. And we
Yes.
thank you and Reverend Barber and his organization. Thank you very much.
From Oklahoma,
So, Maya Terrell Alcon. Goy ma da ahon de key they own day. I'm Maya Terrell from Oklahoma. I'm Kiowa, Wichita, and Comanche. I'm a survivor of the inadequate healthcare system.
my sister, let me do something. I want to ask us, I hear a lot of talking, and we complain about they don't listen to us. If they show the cameras and we're not listening to us, they're going to say they don't even listen to themselves. So tell the folk around you, we need to be able to take 3 hours and hear one another and let the world hear. If you're having any other conversation while these people are talking, then you're doing the same thing that the power structure does. Let's bring it down, y'all. Touch your neighbor and say, bring it down. Let's have attention for at least 3 hours. Can't we do that together? My dear sister.
Thank you. I'm a survivor of the inadequate healthcare system and failed social services in this country. I'm a survivor of physical and sexual violence. Social services in Oklahoma had multiple chances to intervene when my mother abused me and my siblings, but they did nothing. Later, my sister was killed running away from an attacker. Her son, a veteran who I took as my son, died from suicide 2 years later. When we begged for help during their mental health crises, policies in Indian health care and veteran health care systems prevented them from receiving immediate care. Some of my family members made it out, but not all. And my children are survivors by just being alive.
Wow.
It's not enough to be resilient and survive. It's our human right to grow and thrive.
Give it up. That's right.
This is my daughter.
Thank you. Hotso. I'm Kateri Daffron from Oklahoma. I've experienced and lived in an impoverished community all my life. I grew up in Anadarko, Oklahoma, where there are jobs that lack the guarantee of living wages. This caused my family to experience food insecurity, job instability, and poverty. In one of the most successful countries in the world, we are barely getting by. Although I moved away, I am still in poverty. I can't leave poverty. I am 17, a child, yet the country has already failed me. This is wrong.
Wrong.
I, a child, shouldn't have to worry about whether my family is going to be able to pay the rent this month. I shouldn't have to worry about whether the SNAP benefits will be enough to feed me and my family. I am not old enough to vote, but I am one of the many teenagers experiencing this injustice. I shouldn't be the one to have to carry this burden. How do you expect me to contribute to your American dream when I don't even know if I'll have a home next week? I don't want handouts, and I want a fair and equal shot, and until then, we won't be silenced anymore.
That's right. That's right, we won't be. Thank you, my young sister. Can y'all stretch your placards and signs to the heavens and say, we don't mind the wind, but could you hold back the rain? It never rains on a moral movement. And if it does rain, it's a sign of blessing. That's what they say in Africa. Joshua.
My name is Josh Coppola from Bangor, Maine. How do I know who I am? I'm 36 and I'm still trying to answer that question. Too often it's been finding what in me is unacceptable. I've been trying to discern this amidst violence. At times, I'd venture out of the closet, but others' hostility and disgust drove me back in. Hidden away, I pondered, who is safe? How will I be safe? Will I be able to walk the streets comfortable in my own skin? Why is my love or my gender expression so dangerous? Is being myself worth it? That shame brought me to the edge of suicide many times. That fear meant I moved halfway across the country as a young adult, seeking safety, seeking acceptance. The first time I dated a man, I carried a knife with me because a lifetime of transphobic and homophobic slurs were seared into my mind. But it's not just opinions, because trans or gay panic defense has been used to let murderers walk free. That's systemic violence encouraging physical violence, with politicians pushing a false and death-making narrative of Christian nationalism.
Yes,
How
sir.
can my existence be a threat? All I want to do is stay alive.
That's it.
In the PPC, we say equal protection under the law is non-negotiable. That's why I'm here, and that's why I won't be silent anymore.
Give it up. Everybody shout, we won't be silent anymore. All right, Tanya.
Whoa, there goes the earring. Honor to God. My name is Tana Fogel from Lexington, Kentucky, with the Kentuckians for the Commonwealth. I'm here standing in the gap as an impacted low-income person with a felony in my past. I have been denied the right to vote. I fought hard to get my voting rights back. Over 170,000 Kentuckians right now, low-income folks, don't have the right to vote. How can they demand that we work 2 jobs in order to feed our family, and then we don't have time to go to the polls and vote? That ain't right. Kentucky's process to restore the right to vote has been further gutted out and suppressed by Senator Mitch McConnell, Secretary of State Michael Adams, and all of the county clerks in Kentucky by making us work 2 jobs, closing precincts, shortening voting rights and voting days, and mandating voter IDs. The vote is one of the most powerful weapons we have. I know people like me, we made mistakes, but we are not mistakes.
That's it.
We are here. We will not go anywhere. We together can make a difference. We will build power. We will change the narrative. I don't look like what I've been through. I too am America.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me hear it all the way back there. Let us vote. Let us vote. Let us vote.
Say it.
Let us vote.
Say it.
Let us vote.
Say it.
Let us vote. And we won't be silenced anymore. And just one time for me, when I say forward together, I want y'all to say with every fiber in your body, not one step back. I need to hear it all the way back there with them hundreds of thousands of people that I can see. Forward together!
Not one step back!
All right, folks, we continue our live coverage here on the Black Star Network of the Moral Assembly of the Poor People's Campaign here in the nation's capital. Joining us is economist Dr. Julian Malveaux, of course, University of California. Which one of the campuses is it? Which campus in L.A.? Cal State. All right, then. Just hold that microphone up right before your chin, right below your chin.
Right below my chin, okay.
What I keep saying, this is about, you cannot confront or deal with America unless you confront the money.
Yeah.
Period.
The money. You know, what's my favorite word, Roland? Predatory capitalism. If you follow,
that's it. Now, hold on, I want you to keep this because this is a bi-directional mic. You got to keep it right in front of you.
Okay.
Go ahead, you good?
So, like I said, my favorite word is predatory capitalism because that's what is going on. You know, I lost my mama a year ago, June 17th. We learned a lot. I mean, I know about predatory capitalism, but we learned a lot with the caretakers. We were paying an agency $47 an hour for my mama's care, but the workers were getting $15. So where did the other $32 go? You know, I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, we cut a couple side deals. You know, I am an economist, so we cut we'll pay y'all off the side. But the fact is that these companies are exploiting us, and they're exploiting basically women, black women, other women of color, and it's not just with the caretaking industry, but with so many other industries.
Yeah.
People are being ripped. You're listening to these people, and they're talking about their stories. They're talking about what happened, and that's why we love Reverend Barber so much, because he does not just talk high-eye.
Or doesn't have the so-called, as Reverend Jackson said in his 1988 speech at the Democrat National Convention, the big people.
Yeah, no, he got everybody. And he said the first 100 minutes of this rally would be from the voices of the people. And that's what we're hearing. I was in the back covering with WPFW, and we're talking to people. The National Welfare Rights Union was in Baltimore yesterday talking about how people are being ripped off. And, you know, when you see welfare, you think black. But the majority of people who receive public assistance are white people. We talk about homelessness, but you drive around here in downtown D.C., people are getting paid to leave apartments and homes empty. They're getting paid. So this is why this is so important. It's like amazingly important. You see all these people. And this is not a black crowd. This is a mixed crowd. This is a economically affected crowd.
Right. The thing, what was interesting, like right now, you have all this battle going on. People talk about inflation. But then you start breaking down all of these companies having record profits. It's because they're dramatically raising prices. I mean, that's literally happening right now. If you say inflation is 8%, but you look at the price of gas, you're like, that went up more than 8%.
Yeah.
And so, because people are driving me crazy. I'm trying to walk people through how we got to this point. And one of the things someone told me is that the White House economists have got to learn to start explaining this stuff in a way that non-economists can understand it. And so when you look at gas, I said, y'all, we didn't drive for 2 years. They stopped production. Well, when we started back after the vaccine with COVID, we used up the surplus. Well, if you stop production, you got no surplus. So now you're like behind the 8 ball. So now demand for gas is higher. We got less gas, not because they're not drilling, because they stopped production.
Precisely.
And so now you got to either ramp up production to get ahead of the demand, or you're going to be playing catch up. And they're sitting here going, we ain't ramping up demand. We better keep making these profits.
There you go. Well, ExxonMobil, their stock is like soaring. It's absurd. Meanwhile, you know, Susie Q and Johnny Jones, they got to drive to work. They don't have a choice. They got to drive to work. And let's be clear, Roland, when we talk about public transportation, who does not have public transportation? If you look here in D.C. as an example, Southeast D.C. does not have the same transportation infrastructure that up the street, 14th Street does. So these people if they want to go to work, they got to drive. And the gas prices are ridiculous. But it's ridiculous because people are making lots of money. They don't have to make all that money.
Yeah. Well, I saw a stat a couple of weeks ago that totally shocked me, and that is when it came to housing. We only built in the last decade 5.8 million homes. That was the lowest number of homes built in a decade since the 1930s.
Yes.
We've always built anywhere between 15 and 20 million homes. Well, if you only build 5.8 million homes, you're going to have...
By what? Well, population went up by what?
Right.
So therefore, you're putting inflationary pressure on the housing market.
And then private equity held onto those homes and the home foreclosure prices, and now can flip them to renters. So now, so even of the homes that were built, fewer of them are able to buy because they're forcing folks to rent, because they can charge higher rental fees.
With the housing market being constrained, rental prices.
Hold up, okay, there you go.
Rental prices go up, and we're seeing it. We're seeing families. We're not talking about the families who are doubling and tripling up. So it's not just like everybody now homeless. Some people are 3 families in a house that used to have 1 family in it.
Yep.
On top of each other. And, we got to talk about mental illness, because when you got 3 families in one house, somebody crazy.
Well, I was talking to a woman the other day, and her 22-year-old daughter's living with her, and she's getting evicted from a hotel, and her daughter has 2 cats. And I had to ask her, I said, and she said that's making it difficult to find a place to live because of the cats. And I said, well, you're going to have to make a decision. And she says, I can't. I said, why? She said, because those cats literally are my daughter's emotional support animals.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Yeah. And a lot of people who have asthma, who have various and sundry things where they fall out, those pets literally are the ones that I have a friend who has, she has seizures. And her dog is the one when she has a seizure that awakens her from the seizure. He licks up on her and it gets her up. And she could die with the seizures because she bites her tongue. She can't, there are a lot of people who just basically need their pets. Now, I'm not a pet person.
Right.
I just do 2-legged dogs. But we have so many challenges, and the challenges are really about predatory capitalism extracting surplus value from people. So you have people who are living less than comfortable lives because capitalists insist on extracting surplus value, insist on, interest rates went up, which means, should mean that housing becomes more affordable, but it's not gonna. It's not gonna. So this is where we are. And that's why this gathering is so important. Because people, what you see white folks, you see black folks, all kind of folks. What they're saying.
I keep saying broke is broke.
Yeah, there you go. And there's a whole lot of broke people. Reverend Barber has expanded the thinking by saying 140 million in poverty, as opposed to the census will say
that 39 million.
Yeah.
Right.
Census will say 40, but he's looking at people who are just at the cusp. You got a minimum wage, or just 200% of the minimum wage is still just $15 an hour.
Right.
So that's not, and in some of these states like Idaho, these middle fiddle states that we don't think about, people are living very, very poorly. They're below the radar. And if we all could organize and get rid of some of these senators, but people have been trading on their whiteness. So people will vote white as opposed to vote right. Vote white as opposed to voting for their own economic issues. Now, how can you not vote? You're voting against yourself when you vote for Joe Manchin in West Virginia. You're voting against yourself.
Yep.
You're voting against yourself when you vote for Kristen Sinema. And quite frankly, in some cases, you're voting against yourself when you're voting for some of these yellow dog Democrats who basically are not about us.
That's it. Well, Julian, glad to have you out here. We appreciate it. Hopefully, as we continue to have these conversations, with our coverage, people will begin to understand that you can't sit your ass at home and whine and complain.
No.
At the end of the day, because let me be clear, these Republicans, there is significant intensity. They gonna show up in November.
Yeah, and we better. If you can't show up, don't say a word. Don't say a word, because what we know is that they're taking our rights back. They're trying to go back to enslavement, quite frankly. They're going backwards, and you got all these folks. And I must shout out our young people. I'm so angry at the young black people. Voting doesn't make a difference. Hell yes, it does. Hell yes, it does. Think about it. You know, I always tell this story about a former Bennett Bell. I ran into her in 2016. She wouldn't vote for Hillary because she was mad. She thought it should have been Bernie. Okay, whatever.
My whole deal is it wasn't.
So she
now
wouldn't
what
vote.
you gonna do?
She wouldn't vote. So fast forward 2 years, Gorsuch is nominated. Little heifer calls me and says, "Doc, what's gonna happen to our abortion rights?" I said, "Baby girl, I'm over 50. You know, I don't have abortion rights." I said, "You should have thought about that when you said you couldn't vote for Hillary." You know.
Boom. There you go.
There you go.
I mean, that's called
Voting
connecting the dots.
Voting has consequences. Not voting has consequences. And we're seeing it we're seeing it time and time again with this Senate. We want the child tax credit reinstated.
Right.
You know, why can't they do that? Because you got these Republicans who are not going to do that. They don't think we need that. Yes, you do need to get children out of poverty. The child tax credit took 30% of our children out of poverty.
Okay, so you got to answer this. So somebody just tweeted, "You can't fight capitalism with capitalism. You got to change the economic system." Hold on, let me find the comment. All right, I'm trying to find it. But she said you can't fight his ear. So Melanie Dennis says you can't beat capitalism with capitalism. You have to change the economic system point blank. There's no way around it. And all this propaganda against socialism and communism is just that because it works.
Well, you know what I would say, you can't fight capitalism with capitalism, but we live in a country of incremental change. Do not stay home because we have a capitalist society. Don't stay home because of that. Go and vote, because if we get a Bernie, we got an AOC, you got the Jamal Bowman brother out of. When you get these folks who are talking about socialism and working around socialism, even though it's incremental, it's better than what we had.
Well, but also, John Hope Bryan says this. He said, you got to make money like a capitalist to spend it like a socialist.
Yeah.
And the thing is, and I get people saying you have to change the economic system. Y'all, okay.
Ain't happening.
It ain't happening.
Hey, I as you know, I talk about this all the time. The fundamental dilemma in my life is I was trained at MIT. So they didn't teach me socialism. They taught me predatory capitalism. It is how it works. So when I talk about change, I'm also looking at just the dilemma. But let's talk about Dr. King and what he said. I have the audacity to believe that people everywhere they have 3 meals a day for their bodies. Are you talking about a Maggie Lena Walker, the sister who started a bank in Richmond, Virginia, first black woman to start a bank in Richmond, Virginia? You talk about A. Philip Randolph, who, while he said a lot about capitalism, organized workers. So organizing makes a difference, but you cannot make a difference if you keep your behind home.
And you have to put the right folk in place,
yes,
who are going to make those changes.
That's exactly it. So, folks, if you're watching and listening, if you're not voting, you part of the problem.
Simple
You're
as
simply
that.
part of the problem. No, not part of the problem. You is the problem.
Simple as that. Doc, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Anytime. Thank you, Roland.
All right, folks. We
up the
are
good
here.
work, my brother.
Thank you. We are here at the Poor People's Campaign Moral Assembly in the nation's capital. Folks, this started. It started about 3 hours ago. They have speakers from every state sharing their stories. And so let's now go back to the stage to hear one of the speakers. All right.
On May 25th, I chose to lie. A student asked me, "Are we safe in school?" And I said, "Yes." I looked them in the eye and told them I would protect them no matter what, knowing all the time that my body would not beat an AR-15.
That's right.
My students do choose to dream. They dream of creating art and starting local businesses, and I kneel next to their desk and declare it's possible, as if by saying it seriously I can make it true.
Yes.
I'm willing to give my time, my money, my life for my students if that is what it takes. But I am unwilling to tolerate a society where that is what it takes.
Give it up for my brother.
I won't keep lying, and we won't be silent anymore.
Would somebody say with me, as we look at that brother, that teacher, and say, our children shouldn't have to be brave. They should only have to be children. Justin Pearson from Tennessee.
How y'all doing, Poor
Memphis.
People's Campaign? I am Justin J. Pearson from Memphis, Tennessee. And I wish my grandmothers were at this beautiful gathering. I wish they'd be able to assemble here, but they're not. See, they, like many poor and low-wealth people, have died from the systemic injustices that have disrupted our communities for too long. Pollution, environmental racism, and injustice killed both of my grandmothers in their 60s. And now it is continuing to plague our communities, but they didn't die only as martyrs. They were witnesses to the possibilities of our country.
Yes, sir.
They were witnesses to a faith bishop that the folks who built that Capitol who were enslaved had. They were witnesses to a faith that we now carry forward, that they will try to crucify us. They will try to have systems that destroy us. They'll try to build pipelines through our communities. They'll try to poison our waters, but we know that there's resurrection possible. We know that there's a resurrection of people who care about the last, the lost, and the least possible. There's a resurrection of the 140 million happening. But not only that, they let me know that there was a divine intervention possible. It's a divine direction that they gave us. A divine direction that we have in our bodies. And that direction is this, is that the last, the lost, and the least will be first. It's a divine direction that says we will have clean air and clean water and clean soil. It's a divine direction that has the shouts of 140 million people saying we've got one way to go. No matter where those who are against us stand, against us or in front of us, we've got one way to go. No matter how much money they have, no matter how many politicians are in their pockets, we've got one way to go.
Yes,
and
sir.
that's forward together.
Yeah.
Not one step back.
Yeah.
Forward together.
Yeah. Not one step back. Ohio.
Yes. My name is Rukaya Zabrabdum Sakalim, and I'm the CEO and founder of the Musketeer Association, representing the state of Ohio. I am here to speak against racism and greed. We must bring this injustice to a stop now. I was born in a society that racism and fascism was the way of life. I was born in it. Not any education would be brought to us because we were a black skin. Not any health care. I know how the civil rights began. I was there. My family chose to take the beat down, to take the torture, to take the absolute death in order to bring to light the inalienable rights belong to all of us. And they would not be silent anymore. So on this day, I step forth. On this day, I represent those mentors who taught me how to speak this truth. We are human. We are the flower garden of mankind. You will no longer take our blood or our children anymore. And I'm not going back there to those days and times. And I will not let any of you. So you vote them out. If they will not change this injustice, vote them out. All my spiritual people of this, of this flower garden, stand up, lock arms, and say in one resounding voice, forward together.
Forward together.
Not one step back.
Not one step back.
And that is why I am here, for you to speak that truth and walk that walk.
Thank you. Reverend Gloria Jones from Maryland. Give it up for our dear sister. We welcome everybody.
Praise God, everyone, and thank you for being here. And thank the Poor People's Campaign for allowing me to participate. My name is Pastor Gloria Jones Swearinga. I am a pulpit associate at my home church, which is Greater Abyssinia, 88 Lyons Avenue, Newark, New Jersey, where the amazing Dr. Alan Potts is senior pastor. I'm here in behalf of persons with disabilities because I just learned the other day that the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, our passport to full inclusion is still an unfunded mandate. That law was legislated into being in July of 1990. And I don't mean to be rude. I don't mean to be disrespectful. I got some friends on Capitol Hill. But both sides deserve a seat, a front row seat in the Hall of Shame for that level of neglect. Every year they celebrate Disability Day. But I never heard of celebrating nothing. I know what it's like to be made deliberately homeless.
That's right.
And no disability ADA response in Prince George County. I know what it's like to be deliberately separated from a child, deliberately and illegally. This is illegal stuff, y'all, because there was no ADA response. But I also know a God who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above and beyond anything that we can ask or think. And I know this is not the time to give up. It's the time to step up.
Give it up, our sister.
It is time to speak up.
Give it up.
It's a time
Give
to
it up.
Give it up. To press forward, not one step back, until the stupidity and deceitful distraction of celebrating nothing becomes full implementation of the Americans with Disabilities Act. It is time to press forward, not taking one step back.
Give it up for Mama. Give it up.
Until implementation results in full inclusion, and we as persons with disabilities finally take our place on level ground in the society that we help build. God bless you.
God bless you.
And God bless America.
Thank you. And Nicola, I don't need no help. Get around this movement of making fight. Now, I'm going to let everybody listen up. We decided in this movement we were sick of something. And that was every time we go to a meeting and our Latino brothers or our African brothers and sisters speak, why they always have to speak in English? Why can't we listen to them in their own tongue? No, why can't they just come here, be themselves, and then we go back and look at it online and see the interpretation? Why can't we trust a little possible Pentecostalism? We already got the wind. I heard a little thunder. We might as well have some tongues. And maybe if you listen close enough, because the real gift of Pentecost was not the tongues, it was the hearing. And if you listen close enough, you might hear a little humanity. You might hear a little love. You might hear a little justice. So, Oscar, I want you to come and not be interpreted. I want you in your own language to speak your heart. We'll hear the interpretation in the power of your voice and the strength of your body.
Hola, mi gente. ¿Cómo están? Mi nombre es Oscar Pineda.
All right, Mike Man. Now, let me have to come back there and start working on that now. Pay too much for these mics. Come on here.
Hola, mi gente. ¿Cómo están? Mi nombre es Oscar Pineda. Soy originario de El Salvador y vivo en Carolina del Norte. Me identifico como gay, latino e inmigrante indocumentado. Llegué a los Estados Unidos 5 años atrás. Desde entonces he sido testigo y he experimentado de primera mano lo duro que trabajamos en este país. Nosotros como inmigrantes indocumentados contribuimos de manera significativa al desarrollo de esta nación. No obstante, a pesar de las muchas horas que trabajamos o los múltiples trabajos que tenemos, nos resulta casi imposible salir de la pobreza. Somos discriminados, marginados y excluidos por un sistema al que aportamos miles de millones de dólares con nuestro trabajo y actividades económicas.
Yes, sir.
Nuestro trabajo es fundamental y necesario. No existe una sola casa en este país, restaurante, campo de cultivo, fábrica o construcción que no hayan sido trabajados por inmigrantes indocumentados. Sin embargo, nos pagan menos, no tenemos beneficios laborales ni del gobierno.
Yes.
Tampoco acceso a seguro médico y oportunidades de crecimiento como cualquier otro trabajador. Estoy aquí hoy, orgulloso de lo que soy y represento. Hoy levanto mi voz por los más de 11 millones de inmigrantes indocumentados y las más de 140 millones de personas pobres en esta nación que vivimos bajo las sombras de los Estados Unidos y que luchamos día a día por mejores oportunidades y mejor calidad de vida para nuestras familias. No estamos dispuestos a seguir viviendo oprimidos y privados de derechos fundamentales, mientras somos señalados y perseguidos como perros. Basta de separar a nuestras familias, basta de arrancar de los brazos a los niños de sus padres. Merecemos respeto, merecemos una vida digna. Todos nosotros, cada uno de ustedes, somos esenciales. Merecemos una reforma migratoria digna y justa, sin distinciones, sin excusas, sin demora. No guardaremos silencio un minuto más. Exigimos respuestas, exigimos cambios y los exigimos ahora. ¡Adelante juntos! ¡Ni un paso atrás!
Oscar.
¡Adelante juntos! ¡Ni un paso atrás!
Oscar, teach us how to say forward together, not one step back in Spanish. Teach us.
Forward together.
Forward together.
No one step back.
Say it in your language.
Forward together. Adelante juntos.
Adelante juntos.
Ni un paso atrás.
And look what happened when we lifted our hands to the heavens. When we allowed tongues in the room, the clouds moved and the sun came out. It's Pentecost right here. A moral Pentecost right now. Dr. West, the other youth, the young West, Reverend West, before Dr. West.
From the New York Poor People's Campaign and the Labor Religion Coalition. I come from a quote-unquote blue state, a state where currently Democrats control all the branches of our government. And in this time when Roe v. Wade is under threat and anti-LGBT legislation is spreading, there's a lot of talk of my state being a kind of haven. But let's be very clear. Policy violence perpetrated at the federal and state level is devastating the people of New York, too. 58% of our children are poor and low income. That's 2.4 million kids in the state that is home to Wall Street. As a queer and trans person, my community is disproportionately poor and low income. And I'm sick and tired of politicians and corporations waving a rainbow flag and then actively undermining my and my family's and my neighbors' right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What I want as a trans person and a human being is to know that if I lost my job, my wife and my son and I would still be able to access health care. What I want is for my 1-year-old to grow up with great public education, the ability to get a good living wage job and affordable housing. I want him and the generations after him to have a healthy planet and never to be sent off to war to kill other people's kids. I'm also an ordained minister, and my faith has taught me that we live in a world of abundance and that the well-being of the poor and dispossessed determines the well-being of all of us. Scarcity is a lie. Individualism is a lie. And that's why I'm with the Poor People's Campaign, and we won't be silent anymore.
Let the word go forth here and now that the Poor People Campaign is on the move. No matter what color, no matter what gender, no matter what sexual orientation, no matter what religious identity, we decide to love. And when you love folk, you hate the fact that they're treated unjustly. You loathe the fact they're treated unfairly. And if you don't do something, the rocks are going to shout out, and the sun is going to shine, and the clouds are going to move. I want to thank my dear brother William Ball. I want to thank my dear sister Elizabeth Thea Harris for allowing God to use them in such a way that they are, in the language of John Coltrane, a force for good with a love supreme that embraces each and every one of us. And when you hear these voices, and I come from a people, a great people, a black people, who in the face of 400 years of chronic hatred keep dishing out love warriors every generation. So that the spirit of Frederick Douglass and the spirit of Sojourner Truth and the spirit of Fannie Lou Hamer and the spirit of Malcolm X and the spirit of Marcus Garvey say, these black folk gonna love themselves, and if we have the spiritual maturity, it's going to spill over from the chocolate part of town to the vanilla part of town. Oh, yes. It's going to spill over our precious indigenous brothers and sisters whose land was stolen as a precondition of the democracy. It's going to spill over to Spanish speaking. It's going to spill over to Asian. It's going to embrace everybody. But let us be very clear that this Poor People's Campaign was rooted in the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. and Fannie Lou Hamer and James Lawson and Diane Nash in the 1960s, where we tried to break the back of a barbaric Jim Crow and Jane Crow and American apartheid, with the lynching on the one hand and the discrimination and degradation on the other. And what that means, that we say to America, not just to Congress, we say to the White House, we say to the Pentagon, we say to the neo-fascists in the Republican Party, we say to the milquetoast neoliberals in the Democratic Party, that we got a standard bigger than your politics. Somewhere I read, God is not mocked. You're going to reap what you sow. Malcolm X reminded us, chickens will come home to roost. And so when you hear the magnificent voices
of such dignity in all parts of the country, and we are international. We in solidarity with oppressed people in Africa, in Asia, in the Middle East, in Latin America. How come? Well, I'll tell you why I am, because I'm a product of Shiloh Baptist Church. Just like my brother's a product of the black church. I was told in Vacation Bible School that if the kingdom of God is within you, then everywhere you go, you ought to leave a little heaven behind. And when you leave some heaven behind in a hellish world of organized greed and institutionalized hatred and routinized fear and overwhelming hypocrisy, you're going to have to be in the world but not of it. And so what we constitute is precisely that attempt to be